Learning as a maze, building pathways in the brain. So you just were practicing on a bunch of mazes and you did the same one a bunch of different times. So what is that all about? Well, it's actually a good metaphor for how your brain works, what happens in your brain with your neurons, etc. So let's dive into this. So let's take a second and, teacher can pause for a second. Just pair share or shout out with your teacher, up to them what they want you to do. But think out loud, like share out with your friends. How do you try to solve a new maze? So let's pause this and get some answers to that. What do you do when you're trying to solve a new maze? What did you do when you tried to solve that maze? So now that you've had a chance to answer that, let's move on. So here are probably some of the things you already mentioned, but let's go over them, right? So solving a maze, finding your own path. So when you were attempting the maze that you did, or whenever you get a new maze that you're trying to work on, and it's okay if you're not someone who is always trying to solve new mazes, this is typical for most people, right? Basically, you're going to start with trial and error. Usually you kind of know where you start in the maze and where you end, but that's about it. So what you do is you kind of go in and you just go on this path. Oh, that's a dead end. Okay, I can try to go here. It's going pretty well. Okay, that's a dead end. I'll come back here. I'll go around here, right? And you're just kind of following the path and keep going from trial and error. It's not like you have many hints of where to go. Maybe as you get better at doing mazes, there's ways to kind of look at the whole picture and maybe figure out a little bit more. Right, you can kind of look at it in general and say, okay, here's a dead end here, so I don't want to go in that direction, things like that. But generally speaking, it's trial and error. So as you're doing that, you know when you're on the wrong path by dead ending, right? So I'm going here, okay, I know I was on the wrong path. As I go this way, I don't really know if I'm on the right path, but I do know when I'm on the wrong path when I dead end, right? And so that's how it works. You're not really sure you're on the right path until you are successful, right? So I'm going through and it looks like I'm on the right path as I go, oh, but I'm not because I just dead ended. Okay, I thought I was doing pretty well. So I go this way now and it seems like I'm on the right path. I'm pretty sure I'm on the right path. I think I'm on the right path. Okay, but no, I just dead ended, right? So you do not know until you solve the maze whether or not you're on the right path, right? That's just how it is. If you've never done this maze again, you cannot know that you're on the right path until you dead end and know you. Well, sorry, when you dead end, you know you're on the wrong path. You won't know until you actually make it through without any errors that you're on the right path. And then applying previously learned strategies can help. So if you've done mazes before, sometimes it's helpful to start at the end and kind of work back a little bit to get an idea of where to go, and then maybe meet in the middle and go both directions, right? There are other strategies. I'm not actually really great at solving mazes, but again, just like with anything else, finding some different strategies that you've already learned can help you out. But mostly when you're solving a maze, you're on this path where you only know you're doing well and you can only learn and kind of move on when you hit the wrong path, as opposed to being able to know when you're on the right one. So the deal is, right, just like what you found, if you try the same maze again, it's going to get easier, right? If I've already solved this, right, then I'm going to be better at it the next time around. I'm not going to make the same mistakes I made the first time, right? So I've just been demonstrating with you. I've actually, as I'm recording this, I've never actually solved this maze myself. So I showed you some spots where I dead ended. Now I'm going to remember where those dead ends were. And even though I may not know exactly the right path completely, I do remember that I don't want to go in this direction because there's some dead ends. So I'm going to go down this way right off the bat, come in here. I remember there's some dead ends up here, so I'm going to come down this way, come around here, right? And it looks like, oops, sorry, looks like I just solved it, right? So this time around, because of the mistakes I made, I didn't repeat them this time, right? I remembered the different areas where there were dead ends, and I just stayed away from them, so it made it a little easier for me. Same way when you were doing it with partners or doing it again, you probably did better, right? And having partners made it even easier because you had someone else who you could also learn from their mistakes, right? They remembered where you shouldn't go in the maze as you're trying to solve it together, right? So now imagine, what if I handed you a maze that looked like this and said solve it? Well, it's already solved, right? The pathway is already there. I'm not going to make any mistakes. So all you would have to do is trace that path and get to the end, right? It'd be super easy, okay? Now imagine what if a maze I handed you looked like this. Even easier now because it just, boom, just cut out all the rest of it. I just follow this path from corner to corner, straight line, right? No problem whatsoever, right? That would be super easy. It wouldn't be really fun in terms of solving a maze, but it'd be really easy, right? Well, what if I was to say this is what your brain pathways look like when you master a skill? Right? That's what it feels like to master a skill. It's almost too easy. You mastered it. You're not thinking about it. You just draw that straight line. You don't even need to take any concern. So let's get a little deeper into that. So the same way that you are learning how to navigate the paths in the maze is almost the exact same way that you actually learn how your brain works. So we've talked about neurons. I've showed you some chains. I've shown you little pictures of neurons. Now I'm going to show you what they really look like in your brain. They're all over the place. They're all spread out like this. Now you can see it kind of is a little bit of a maze, right? These neurons are kind of all over the place. How are you supposed to know which pathway is the one that you want to send messages through to get you to, solve a math problem versus which ones are the pathways you're going to send messages through to, read a book or get better in writing an essay in ELA? It's really hard to tell. It's like a maze, all right? So when we're learning a new skill, it's the same kind of thing. It's starting with trial and error. Your brain is trying to figure out which pathway you should even be using to do this right. All right? And again, just like in a maze, you're only going to know when you're on the wrong path when you mess up. Because I have not done this before, I don't know what success even really looks like in this new thing that I'm learning. So I'm just going to try random pathways to try to get it figured out. And of course, neurons go really fast, so you can try a lot of pathways in a short amount of time, but it's going to be awkward. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. I'm going to be finding the wrong pathway and do the wrong thing. And so all I can know is my brain knows, oh, that pathway didn't work. When I sent that pathway, I made my hand move to the left. And really, when I'm trying to catch that ball, I should be moving to the right. So, okay, let's try this pathway, these connections when I'm playing catch, right, or when I'm solving this problem. Right? Your brain does the same thing. Every time you make a mistake, it goes, okay, well, I at least now know where I shouldn't go. Now I can focus my attention, and slowly but surely it stops doing all these things off to the wrong directions and can say, okay, I'm supposed to be following this pathway. But again, you're not going to be sure you're on the right path. You're not sure you've got the right connections. You're making the wrong, right, sending the message in the exact right place until you are successful. Then once you're successful, you say, okay, that's it, and your brain knows, and it starts reinforcing, okay, this is the pathway. This is the direction I want to be going in. Okay, I don't want to go this way. I remember that because I went wrong. Right? And again, applying previously learned strategies or skills in this case can help. So again, if I am learning how to type and I already know how to play piano, it can help me because I know, well, I'm going to be using my fingers in a particular way. I'm going to be typing in a particular way. That's similar to how I use piano. So your brain says, okay, well, this pathway is the direction. This is where my piano playing pathway is, and I know piano playing uses similar skills. So I'm going to go in that general direction and then play from there because it'll be a little bit different. So I'll have to adjust once I get over here. But at least the starting point, I can just kind of get on the path and get going. And then do my piano work, right? Again, this is just like solving this maze. You've got this maze of neurons and your brain's just trying to figure out what you should be using. And that's how you make mistakes. That's how you learn, all right? It's just like that maze. So again, if you try practicing the same skill again, it gets easier, right? Just in the same way that now you've learned from some mistakes, you know which directions not to go, you know which general direction you want to be headed in, which pathway is more or less the right one. Now this second time around, after you practice this a couple more times, now your brain knows, okay, I'm supposed to be going to this direction. I'm sending messages to these neurons. I'm avoiding these other ones, right? And it starts getting easier and faster at the skill. You're not going to make the same mistakes you made the first time. I mean, you might make some of them, but generally speaking, right, the big mistakes are not ones you're going to repeat because you'll learn from them. Your brain remembers, I don't want to go in that direction. I'm going to go in this direction. I don't want to make that mistake, right? I should do it this way. I should use this pathway in my brain. And again, just like with the maze, you learn from those mistakes and you won't repeat them. That's how you get better. It's not actually from doing it the right way. You learn from doing it the wrong way because then you know what to fix the next time. And I really want to emphasize that. It's exactly how your brain works. Your brain reinforces pathways based on knowing what is wrong and the mistakes it's made going the wrong direction more strongly than it does by just getting it right. So if you got it right randomly the first time, it's actually going to make you probably worse at it the time after that because you didn't make enough mistakes to learn from. So it's really important when you're learning. Your brain learns from the mistakes, and that's really important. Okay? So again, once you've already practiced similar skills, your pathway is kind of like a pre-solved maze. So we'll go back to that example of playing piano and typing. So I'm learning to type. Well, I already have this pathway for the piano, so it's much easier. I'm going to learn it much faster. And somebody who has never played piano and never used their fingers in that particular way, right? Maybe never even seen a keyboard, is like getting this maze with no pathway at all and having to figure it out from scratch. So some people have an advantage when they're learning a new skill. So it might seem like, oh, I was already good at that. I didn't need to practice. We often get confused and we think, oh, that person is just better at it, or learning for me, I was already good at that thing when I first learned it. Nobody is. It's just that some of us have these other skills, have already had similar practice, so it's like we're getting handed a pre-solved maze, which makes it really easy for us, which makes it less easy for the people who don't have a pre-solved maze. So really think about that. If you're doing sports and you're with someone who has never tried that sport before, right? You might think you're so great and special, but really think about it. If you were working on a completely blank maze and the other person had one that was already solved for you, would you feel that special? Or sorry, would it be right for the other person to feel better than you because they solved the maze faster when they got a maze that was already solved? No, right? It's the same thing for everything else. If you're better than somebody at something, it's because you've had the practice. You have already developed those skills in a way, right? And so you kind of got a step ahead. So you should be helping those people grow. And great, it's really important to emphasize how much effort you put into it and to celebrate that. But again, it's not something that makes you better than them as a person. It just means that you've had more practice, right? And then you want to help those people so they can learn faster and know the right pathways. Okay. And again, finally, when you master a skill, your brain makes a more direct, bigger pathway like this. So, right, as you get better, right, you've done this thing a lot of times, and your brain has this pre-solved maze. It knows how to do it. It starts becoming easier and easier, and then literally your brain starts to change, right? It will grow differently. So, although the pathway when you first do it through your brain will be all windy like this, right? It's slowly going to make it straighter and straighter and more efficient as you get better and as you practice more until you have this pathway that's just boom, straight shot all the way through. It's not windy anymore. It's just right off the bat, super simple, really easy, right? That is how your brain works. That's what it looks like. This is what it looks like when you master a skill, when you're really extraordinarily good at something, and why it seems so easy for some people, and why even when you're really good at something, it's hard to teach other people how to do it, because your pathway is so straight and so crazy, just efficient, that you do it in a way that literally most of the time you're not even thinking anymore, and it's hard for you to know what you're doing to describe it to others. So again, your brain changes itself as you get better, and so when you master it, you got this straight line. Again, really important to note, as you learn something, your brain changes itself. It lines it up differently. It gets your neurons on a different pathway, changes it from a maze to a really direct shot to make it easier for you. And again, once this maze is a straight shot like this, you don't need to think about it anymore. Now you can do other things while doing that skill. Now, here's my riding a bike pathway, right? I can do whatever I want while riding a bike. I can think about other things. I could even read a book, right? Except it might make me run into a wall, but I'm not going to fall off my bike until I hit something, right? Because I've got this almost on automatic autopilot because it's so simple now. That's how learning works, just like learning how to solve a maze.